Hello, BookTube. I have a tag for you today, even though it's not Tuesday. It's a tag I saw on Lukash's channel, A Cruel Reader's Thesis. He took an old tag that was made by Adam at Memento Mori and repurposed it for the present day. Adam made a tag called the book Postscripts tag a few years ago, which is just a series of prompts about your reading year, the year that's ending. And Lukash thought to update it, which is a great idea. It should be updated every year, and I'm hoping that you all do it. This is one of those tags that can be done every year. I'll leave a link to both their channels, and we'll just do the prompts here. Let's see here. I've got them on the Samsung Galaxy tab here. Prompt number 1 is the longest book you read this year and the book that took you the longest. The second part doesn't really apply to me now that I do nothing but read and write. I usually read books right at a go. The rest of you are really busy and you've got lots of commitments, so you are working on a book over time and then you finish it. But I don't have lots going on. I don't have lots of other commitments, so usually when I pick up a book, I have blocked out the time to just read it. But the first part does apply to me, the longest book I've read this year. And if we talk new books, my remit of new releases in the American book market, that would probably be The Age of Decadence by Simon Heffer. Big, huge thing that I read, I think at the beginning of this year, maybe at the end of last year, on the sort of Edwardian and pre-war years in England, when the moneyed classes had no income taxes to worry about, they had no estate taxes really to worry about, they could live a life of unbridled opulence. And the book is really, really good. Now that I think about it, I'm not 100% sure that it was this year. But it was really enjoyable either way, so it's a recommend. And I wrote a review of it. I'll leave a link to the review if I remember to do that. Prompt number 2 is a book you read in 2021 that was outside of your comfort zone. My comfort zone is pretty wide, but I read a book that I reviewed for Kirkus Reviews in the summer that was violent, erotic porn, basically. And that itself is not outside my comfort zone, obviously, since I'm a big fan of Dennis Cooper. But the way when Dennis Cooper does it, it's knowing art, and when this author did it, it was unknowing therapy. It was the author. I know that the author had no idea how much he was revealing about himself and how embarrassing it was, and that's always outside my comfort zone. I don't remember the name of that book, but I don't think I'd give it anyway, since my review was anonymous. That doesn't seem fair. But that is a reading experience that I remember, trying to summon the will to write 300 words on that book. Prompt number 3 is, how many books did you reread in 2021? I reread 161 books in 2021. As of the recording of this video, 2021 still has 3 weeks to go. That number is, for instance, probably going to double, because in just a couple of weeks I'm not going to want to do any reading that isn't rereading. So that number is provisional. But prompt number 4 is your favorite reread of 2021. This would be a toss-up between a new thing, the new landmark edition of Xenophon's Anabasis, that is just terrific, just a terrific volume. I mean, the March Up Country is great anyway. Countless students of ancient Greek that toiled in the wasteland of Plato and Aristotle and suddenly encountered this great first-person, eyewitness adventure story full of personalities, driven by plot. And they feel like reading has become a joy. Learning has become a treat. There's that. That's relatively new. I've read that a couple of times in the last month or so. But there's also I have a prompt here for you. There's also this huge thing. The 5 years later saga of the Legion of Superheroes. That finally got a big volume of its own. Too big. I mean, this is one of these too big anthologies that they're not really practical to read, that you can't walk around with them. They're going to fall apart on you. But as an event, I, like most Legion fans, was waiting forever for them to reprint these stories, because they're great. They're absolutely great. They're my beloved Legion of Superheroes, a team of superpowered teenagers 1,000 years in the future. Only 5 years later, in 1,000 years in the future, when the world has become darker and more violent and seedier and more disillusioned. And when I originally read what was going to happen in the trade journals, I thought this is going to be a desecration, but it was great. It's one of the greatest runs on the Legion of Superheroes that exists, mainly because it is dystopian, yes, but it's intensely respectful of the history of the title. which is all that an old fan should really want. And if they get that, they should be willing to take any kind of change. So there's both of those. There's Legion 5 Years Later saga, which is finally out in a big hardcover. One of you was very kind enough to send it to me. That it was revisiting an old friend. I know those issues backwards and forwards. My letters appear in several of those issues. And then the other is a much older friend. The Anabasis of Xenophon is a much older friend, and a beautiful new edition. Prompt number 5 is a book you read for the first time in 2021 that you look forward to rereading in the future. And I would say this is a lot of them. A lot of the stuff that I read in 2021 I got rid of, and when I encounter it again down the line, when the Brattle provides, I will certainly reread it. I'm sure that applies to lots of books that I read. But the two that came to mind were Stalin's War by Sean McMeekin, a great big volume that's kind of a slight revisionist history about how we should be thinking about World War II and Russia's involvement in it, Russia's importance in it. I read it, and there were parts of it that I disagreed with, but I really enjoyed it. And I'm sure that when it comes out in paperback, if the publisher sends me a paperback, I'm sure that I'll just block out time and reread the whole thing. And the other is John Campbell's Cross-Examined, another big book, this one about Christianity, examining the claims of Christianity, its historicity, its veracity, its morality, the arguments for God's existence, all of them, ranging all the way from Thomas Aquinas to the present day. Amazingly comprehensive book. I'm sure that I don't think it'll ever get a paperback, but I'm sure that I will be rereading that copy that I got for a long time. There was a lot in it that I'm sure I will want to dig around in even more. Then prompt number 6 is favorite single short story or novella that you read in 2021. And I have another prompt. This is from the May-June issue of Analog. There's a story in here called Two Factor by Elizabeth Adams. It's a short story that from an author I'd never heard of before, about a spaceship that has been set on self-destruct by 2 insane crew members who are out of commission. They are in cryogenic suspension, but one heroic crew member is on board and naturally wants to stop self-destruct from happening. And it's a 2-factor process. I could easily imagine the whole story arising from the author being irritated by the fact that so many tech platforms and devices are moving to mandatory two-factor identification. You may have seen, if you're a booktuber, you may have seen notices from YouTube saying that they are doing that, and you'll be locked out of your own account unless you activate two-factor authentication. And that's ominous, of course. That kind of notice when YouTube sends it is ominous, because despite the fact that YouTube is crammed up to its eyeballs with ads, you can't go anywhere on YouTube except this channel without seeing ads. They make their money from bartering information. That it's an information game. You are the product that they are charging and trading all around. And they can just demand, that's what this is. This is not a demand for greater security. That's absurd. Google Chrome is as secure as it gets. It doesn't ask you for two-factor authentication. YouTube could easily make its platform secure without asking you for that. The reason it's doing this is to force you to give it more information. A whole lot more information. That kind of frustration may have been the origin of this story, but boy, oh boy, is it great. One obstacle after another that the main character faces until finally, at the end of the story, you're just assuming she's done. Half a dozen places in the story, you just assume she's done. She can't possibly beat this next complication, and yet she manages to do it. It's thrilling, just thrilling. Prompt number 7 is Mass Appeal, a book you liked and would recommend to a wide variety of readers. This is tricky for me. I take book recommending very, very seriously, so I don't tend to make blind recommendations. But in terms of a subject matter that might appeal to a lot of readers, for instance, there's Everything and Less by Mark McGurl, which we saw on this channel. It's his book about how Amazon has changed books and reading. Not just the marketing of books, but how people actually read and think about what they read. I argued with a lot of it. The author makes a lot of what I think are high-flying, unsubstantiated claims, and that might bother you, but I think you'll find a lot of it really, really interesting, especially since you're almost certainly directly involved in the subject. Even if you've taken a no Amazon vow of some kind or other, it's almost impossible to avoid some subsidiary of Amazon. And it's almost, even if you do manage to do that, it's still almost impossible to avoid the way Amazon is reshaping the way people think about books and publishing. So it might appeal to a wide variety. Then question number 8 is specialized appeal, a book you liked but would be hesitant to recommend to just anyone. For me, this is a lot of books, a lot. But the example that came to mind is something I just read comparatively recently. We saw it on this channel, The Roman Republic of Letters by Katharina Volk, which is all about literacy and reading and publishing and inflamed public rhetoric in the age of Cicero and Caesar, in that hyper-documented period when the Roman Republic was shifting over to an autocracy. And it's really, really good, a tremendously good book on Roman history. But even when I was reading it, I was asking myself, who on earth would you recommend this to? Even if you're a Roman history fan, you might not know enough to get enough of the nitty-gritty specifics to get a whole lot out of this particular study, even though it's well done. And even though the author does make an attempt to put it on a general kind of footing. Even so, I'd be hard-pressed to recommend it to someone. Then prompt number 9 is reflect on your year as a bookish content creator. Goals met, good and bad memories, favorite videos you made, etc. And as usual, my year was mostly blindingly wonderful. Knowing all of you, talking with you every day, has just been blindingly wonderful. There have been negative aspects, as there are every year. The one troubling aspect of the negative things this year has been their political tone. And I'm trying not to be all Irish and fatalistic and think of that as a harbinger of the things to come. I'm trying to think of that as just the mood of the moment, rather than letting it get me down. But that was minor. Compared to all the great stuff, I send you books, you send me presents, you send me your old tech that I love. I make fun of you, you make fun of me. It's just a wonderful, wonderful thing. It's like having lots and lots of bookish friends that I've never met. And also the year lately has been characterized by the ongoing gag on this channel of it being a 12-nay channel, the grim struggle to hold off 12K subscribers. I originally joked that it was the brave 300 at the pass at Thermopylae that was saving me from 12K, but as several of you have gleefully pointed out, that number has decreased. Dozens of those 300 have either died or defected to the Persians, so the number is now closer to 200. And there's no Frank Miller graphic novel called The 200. And that's it. That is the book Postscript tag for the 2021 version. All I have to do is tag people. I'm hoping that every booktuber does this. This is just a lot of fun, and these are exactly the kind of questions that I want to know at the end of the year. But I'm hoping that you do it. Either way, I'm going to wrap this up and go sit down. But I will be back. Thank you, BookTube.